Hi, this is Larry Siegel from TV Worth Watching. Welcome to our inaugural video of FlockTV. Let's start off by acknowledging our founder and our inspiration for caring about what's best on TV, David Bianculli. While others provide fair, insightful, and much-needed criticism of TV programming, David's MO was always to focus only on the good stuff. Through his years of column writing in newspapers such as the Daily News or the Philadelphia Inquirer, or should I say, Philadelphia! And through his Bianculli's Best Bets on TVWorthWatching.com, David led all us horses to the finest water. And in these bountiful days of peak TV, the need for this has never been more acute. In fact, I know based on the dozens and dozens of comments made right here on our YouTube channel since David signed off, many of us drank from that well deeply. Thank you, Professor. So, it's in that tradition of pointing to what's best that FlockTV takes wing. And it's about taking flight that kicks us off. Let's zip over to Apple TV Plus. If you bought an iPhone recently, or iPad, or Apple TV, or Mac, you've got yourself 1 year for free. So that's cool. If not, then you'll find yourself needing to shell out about $5 a month. And there's some great content there. I recently reviewed a wonderful series on the streamer, Ted Lasso. In the comments section below, I'll link to that review. But right now, I need to point you to an incredible series just about to finish its second season run, For All Mankind. Created by the uber-talented and Hugo, Saturn, and Peabody Award winner Ronald D. Moore, who rebooted Battlestar Galactica after he, pardon the expression, launched his career on 3 of the Star Trek franchises. For All Mankind is an alternate history series about what happened to the U.S. manned space program after a pivotal event takes place on the cusp of Neil Armstrong's moon landing. What was that event? The Russians got there first. Duh. The shockwaves ripple through NASA, the U.S. government, and the world. Soon, the course of events as we know them begins to diverge in very subtle and then very meaningful ways. Meanwhile, real-world historical figures such as Richard Nixon, Deke Slayton, and Wernher von Braun come and go interacting with the show's fictional characters. As a high school Latin student, this is something I loved about HBO's 2005 series Rome. Now, Season 1 starts right there in July of 1969, and we experience in very believable fashion the space race ramping up. The pleasures of this series are manifold, and I'll mention some of them here, but it's the deeper ramifications that creep in around the edges that's most intriguing. First, the components of this endeavor. Storytelling. Ron Moore and his collaborators bring decades of award-winning writing and pacing to the best effect. He dabbled in season-long arcs way before it was popular in the 90s with Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and now this approach is expected in any streaming series. Here, one heroic or tragic step leads to the next with plenty of history-twisted surprises along the way. What's interesting is that while the stakes grow more profound in Season 2, the pace slows down just enough for some incredible character work, which is the next booster on this rocket. Characters. Some familiar and some new faces show up, with each actor bringing greater and greater complexity to their roles. It may all start with the writing, but the performances that each of the 8 directors bring forth are nuanced, authentic, at times exhilarating, and at times devastating. One scene in particular during Season 2's Episode 3 is among the most honest, heart-wrenching, and intimate I've seen since Jonathan Banks' Emmy-worthy I Broke My Boy scene back in the first season of Better Call Saul. Now, special effects. Yes, it's about space exploration, but it's about making the spectacular look real. There's not one frame that looks fake, whether it's the ocean-based launch of the planned in real life but never built Sea Dragon, taking a stroll on the moon, or putting one of our characters right next to the President of the United States, a la Forrest Gump. It's seamless, it's real, and the best thing about the special effects, you can't see that they're special effects. Production. Not since Mad Men have I felt a show nailed a 1970s room so perfectly. Each set feels lived in and slavishly, if not lovingly, recreated. And the score by the seemingly ubiquitous Jeff Russo is by parts evocative, thrilling, and at times profound. But with all these pieces coming together, what begins to transcend what you're seeing and feeling on the screen is the deeper message about alternate history itself. And that's the true power of good science fiction. In our timeline, as you may well know, we beat the Russians to the moon, as their program underwent a series of failures after the death of Sergei Korolev and never recovered. But guess what? It also means, without a superpower adversary at the time, that there was no space race. Our country was dealing with a hugely unpopular war raging in Vietnam, and NASA faced a never-ending series of budget cuts. Apollo missions were scrubbed, and brand new Saturn V rockets became museum displays. It's been 49 years since Apollo 17, and we never went back to the moon. But what does this say? That without an adversary, the exploration of space never leaves the launch pad? That fear drives innovation? So many of the characters in For All Mankind struggle with the desire for scientific advancement versus arming themselves because of the fear and suspicion of the enemy. The series hasn't yet answered the question of whether humankind is better off because what comes from that fear, but the phrase, necessity is the mother of invention, does come to mind. And the coronavirus vaccine I got last month, if nothing else, came from a scientific advancement driven by a healthy sense of fear. One last observation. For All Mankind does make room for addressing what those in the human resources call DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Women's representation, black representation, LGBTQ representation, immigrant representation. As the series progresses through the decades, I'm hoping Neil Armstrong's famous phrase advances to for all humankind. The implication the shows deal with wondrously, captivatingly, entertainingly affects us all. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. One thing I think we've all learned from TV Worth Watching is that this is a community of thoughtful, TV-loving folks, so please don't be shy. See you next time.